Debalowo kejo ketowa. Edakunye ni obiwa. Debalowo kejo ketowa. Iṣẹ́ burúkú ni wọ́n ń ṣe tí wọ́n bá jalè wọ́n wá tún fọ́lé ẹ̀dàkúnyé ẹ̀yìn òbí wa lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa. Iṣẹ́ burúkú ni wọ́n ń ṣe tí wọ́n bá jalè wọ́n wá tún fọ́lé ẹ̀dàkúnyé ẹ̀yìn òbí wa lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa. Ẹ̀dàkúnyé ẹ̀yìn òbí wa lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa.
Education must not simply teach work. It must teach life. With this quote from W.E. Du Bois, I welcome you all to another edition of this wonderful program on radio, Education Today. Education Today is a program that aims to call the attention of the public to education matters as they affect the effective running of the educational system and the achievement of educational goals. This comes on air every Saturday from 3 o'clock to 4 p.m. West African time on this station, Light Radio. Our goal is to educate, inform, orientate, and entertain the society on educational matters, address issues affecting the educational system, influence public opinion, and drive effective educational policy directions to guide the formulators and implementers. For your comments, questions, and contributions, you can reach us on Facebook via facebook.com/lightsradio, on X @TheLightsRadio, on Instagram Light_radio, and on YouTube, Light Space Radio. You can also call or send a message to us via WhatsApp 0809-738-4000. We'll go on a quick break, and when we return, the program continues. Please stay with us.
dára púpọ̀ ẹ̀kọ́ ló láyé táwa yìí sẹ̀ ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní dẹni gíga ẹ̀kọ́ ló ń gbé ní dépò ọlá.
If you just joined in, you are listening to Education Today on Light Radio, and we kick off with the news segment. Hello, good afternoon, and welcome to the news on Education Today, reaching you live from Light Radio. I am Nima Ibrahim. First, the headlines. OOU to commence degree program in criminology and forensic science. Federal government approves new transnational educational policy. 2024 UTME applicants face challenges over NIN details. And on the foreign scene, Canada announces 2-year cap on Nigerians, other foreign students' visas. Now the details. The Vice Chancellor of the OLUBUNMI University, Agoiwe, Professor Ayodeji Agbola, has unveiled plans by the institution to commence the degree program in criminology and forensic science. This, according to him, is part of the university's response to addressing the security challenges that have beset the nation. He also spoke of plans to unbundle some of the programs currently running in the university this year, including mass communication and computer science. Agbola gave the hint on Wednesday in Agoiwe while addressing a press conference to highlight the activities lined up for the university's 32nd and 33rd convocation ceremonies, which began this week. The federal government has approved a new policy on transnational education in Nigeria. This by the Minister of State for Education, Yusuf Sununu, disclosed this to journalists, said the council has adopted guidelines for implementing transnational education across borders. He said this would allow Nigerian institutions to collaborate with their foreign counterparts to offer education services within Nigeria. Sununu explained that as a member of the World Trade Organization, Nigeria is signatory to the General Agreement on Trade in Services, GATT, which includes education as an exportable service. He said the new policy is aimed at increasing access to tertiary education, given the large number of secondary school graduates seeking university education yearly. Sununu also noted that transnational education will ease placement pressures and allow progressive exchange of ideas and research. According to him, this is expected to boost tertiary enrollment and minimize foreign exchange pressures of Nigerians studying overseas. He also added that transnational education would attract foreign investments and funding to government institutions. Few days after the commencement of the sale of forms for the 2024 Unified Tertiary Matriculation Examination (UTME), prospective applicants have expressed frustration over their inability to link their telephone lines with their National Identification Number (NIN) or incorrect information contained in their NIN details. To address issues of malpractice and impersonation during examination, the Joint Admissions and Matriculation Board (JAM) had mandated prospective candidates to use their NIN for the application process. But following complaints of inability to link their details and generate electronic pins for registration since the exercise kicked off on January 15, the examination body said it has scheduled a meeting with the leadership of the National Identity Management Commission (NIMC). In a reaction, JAM's head of public affairs, Fabian Benjamin, said the body is surprised by the volume of complaints from applicants and parents. He, however, advised applicants who observe incorrect details in their NIN records to halt their UTME registration until the information is updated and corrected by NIMC. And on the foreign scene, Canada has finally announced its much anticipated plans to establish a temporary 2-year cap on the number of new study permits issued to international students moving into the country. The Minister for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship of Canada, IRCC, Mark Miller, unveiled the temporary cap on the issuance of study visas for foreign students on Monday. According to the information released by IRCC, the cap for the year 2024 is anticipated to lead to approximately 360,000 approved study permits, marking a 35% decrease from the figures recorded in 2023. The ICEF monitor said the move is the latest in a series of measures that the Canadian government has taken in recent months to tighten integrity controls within Canada's student visa program. That's all on the news for today, but before we go, a quick recap of the major stories. OOU to commence the group program in criminology and forensic science. Federal government approves transnational education policy. Applicants face challenges over NIN details for 2024 UTME registration. And on the foreign scene, Canada announces 2-year cap on Nigerians' other foreign students' visas. That's the news. It was compiled by Nima Ibrahim and edited by OLUBUNMI KAZEEM. Don't forget, for the coverage of your educational programs, competitions, fairs, seminars, among others, you can call us on 0702 507 4268, or you can send us an email via educationmediaservices@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. The program will be back shortly.
Iṣẹ́ burúkú ni wọ́n ń ṣe tí wọ́n bá jalè wọ́n wá tún fọ́lé ẹ̀dá kún yé ẹni òbí wa lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa. Iṣẹ́ burúkú ni wọ́n ń ṣe tí wọ́n bá jalè wọ́n wá tún fọ́lé ẹ̀dá kún yé ẹni òbí wa lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa. Ẹ̀dá kún yé ẹni òbí wa lẹ́bàá lówó kẹjọ kẹtọ́ wa.
That's all we can take on the news for today. And right now, we'll take the junior segment with Mr. KAZEEM. Good afternoon, Mr. KAZEEM.
Good afternoon, Nima. It's a pleasure to be here. And good afternoon, listeners.
All right, you have the floor.
All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the junior segment of education today, where we consider random ideas, thoughts, personalities, events, concepts, and celebrations that many people are unaware of. The objective is to broaden our horizon and increase our base knowledge of things around us beyond what is taught in schools and classes. I am OLUBUNMI KAZEEM. Today I want to talk about Bermuda. What exactly have you heard about the word Bermuda? I'm sure probably some of us when we were young, you have heard of Bermuda Triangle. All right, Bermuda is a British overseas territory in the North Atlantic Ocean. It is an archipelago consisting of 181 islands, although the most significant islands are connected by bridges and appear to form one landmass. It has a land area of 54 square kilometers, which is approximately 21 square miles. Bermuda is named after Spanish explorer Juan de Bermudez, who discovered the archipelago in 1505. The islands have been permanently inhabited since 1612, when an English settlement was established at St. George's. Forming part of British America, Bermuda was governed under royal charter by the Somers Isles Company until 1684, when it became a crown colony. The first enslaved Africans were taken to Bermuda in 1616. A full plantation of economy did not develop, and the slave trade largely ceased by the end of the 17th century. The economy instead became maritime focused, with the colony serving as a base for merchants, privateers, and the Royal Navy, giving its name to the Bermuda rig and Bermuda sloop. It became an imperial fortress, the most important British naval and military base in the Western Hemisphere. Tourism had been a significant contributor to Bermuda's economy since the 19th century. After the World War II, the territory became a prominent offshore financial center and tax haven. Divided into 9 parishes, Bermuda is a self-governing parliamentary democracy with a bicameral parliament located in the capital, Hamilton. The House of Assembly dates to 1620, making it one of the world's oldest legislatures. The Premier is the head of government and is formally appointed by the Governor, who is nominated by the British government as a representative of the King. The United Kingdom is responsible for foreign affairs and defense. An independence referendum was held in 1995 with a large majority voting against independence. As of 2019, Bermuda has a population of around 64,000 people, making it the second most populous of the British Overseas Territories. Black Bermudians, primarily descended from African slaves, make up around 50% of the population, while white Bermudians, primarily of British, Irish, and Portuguese descent, make up to 30% of the population. There are smaller groups from other races or identifying as mixed race, and about 30% of the population is not Bermudian by birth. Bermuda has a distinct dialect of English and has historically had strong ties with other English-speaking countries in the Americas, including the United States, Canada, and the Commonwealth Caribbean. It is an associate member of the Caribbean community. Now to the juicy details. Ever heard of Bermuda Triangle and mysterious disappearances there? Do you believe this myth? Well, come along with us. Bermuda Triangle is a section of the North Atlantic Ocean of North America in which more than 50 ships and 20 airplanes are said to have mysteriously disappeared. The area, whose boundaries are not universally agreed upon, has a triangular shape that reaches approximately from the Atlantic coast of Florida to Bermuda to the islands known as the Greater Antilles. Reports of unexplained occurrences in the region date to the mid-19th century. Some ships were discovered completely abandoned for no apparent reason. Others transmitted no distress signals and were never seen or heard from again. Aircraft have been reported and then vanished, and rescue missions are said to have vanished when flying in the area. However, wreckage has not been found, and some of the theories advanced to explain the repeated mysteries have been fanciful. The USS Cyclops, an American ship, went missing in the area of the Bermuda Triangle in March 1918. There were no survivors, and the wreck has never been found. Although theories of supernatural causes for these disappearances abound, geophysical and environmental factors are most likely responsible. One hypothesis is that pilots failed to account for the agonic line, the place at which there is no need to compensate for magnetic compass variation as they approach the Bermuda Triangle, resulting in significant navigational error and catastrophe. Another popular theory is that the missing vessels were felled by so-called rogue waves, which were massive waves that can reach heights of up to 30.5 meters, which is 100 feet, and would theoretically be powerful enough to destroy all evidence of a ship or an airplane. The Bermuda Triangle is located in an area of the Atlantic Ocean where storms from multiple directions can converge, making rogue waves more likely to occur. According to the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, there is no evidence that mysterious disappearances occur with any greater frequency in the Bermuda Triangle than in any other large, well-traveled areas of the ocean, and boaters and flyers continue to venture through the triangle without any event. Now you know about Bermuda and the mysterious Bermuda Triangle. That's all on the Did You Know segment for this week. I am OLUBUNMI KAZEEM. Education Today continues shortly. Please stay with us.
That was the Did You Know segment. And right now we'll take the International Day segment with Aisha. Good afternoon, Aisha.
Good afternoon, Nemo.
All right, here you go.
Good afternoon and welcome to the International Day segment of Education Today, where we take a look at different days embarked by the United Nations to commemorate different aspects of our lives as global citizens. I am Aisha Hussein. Today we'll be considering the International Day of Education, commemorated every 24th January of the year. Education is a human right, a public good, and public responsibility. International Day of Education is an annual international observance day held on January 24th and is dedicated to education. The United Nations General Assembly on December 3rd, 2018 adopted a resolution which proclaimed 24th of January as International Day of Education in celebration of the role of education for bringing global peace and sustainable development. Thereafter, on 24th January 2019, the first International Day of Education was celebrated. The right to education is enriched in Article 26 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The declaration calls for free and compulsory elementary education. The Convention on the Rights of Child, adopted in 1989, goes further to stipulate that countries shall make higher education accessible to all. When it's adopted, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development in September 2015, the international community recognized that education is essential for success of all 17 of its goals. Sustainable Development Goal 4, in particular, aim to ensure inclusive and equitably quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all by 2030. Education offers children a ladder out of poverty and a path to promising future. But about 244 million children and adolescents around the world are out of school. 670 million children and adolescents cannot read and do basic math. Less than 40% of the girls in sub-Saharan Africa complete lower secondary school, and some 4 million children and youth refugees are out of schools. Their right to education is being violated, and it is unacceptable. Without inclusive and equitable quality education and lifelong opportunities for all, countries will not succeed in achieving gender equality and breaking the circle of poverty that is leaving millions of children, youth, and adults behind. The theme of the International Day of Education 2024 is Learning for Lasting Peace. According to UNESCO, this is to celebrate the crucial role education and teachers play in countering hate speech, a phenomenon which has snowballed in recent years with the use of social media damaging the fabric of our societies. The world is seeing a surge of violent conflict, paralleled by an alarming rise of discrimination, racism, xenophobia, and hate speech. The impact of this violence transcends any boundary based on the geography, gender, race, politics, offline and online. An active commitment to peace is more urgent today than ever. Education is central to this endeavor, as underlined by the UNESCO. Recommendation on education for peace, human rights, and sustainable development. Learning for peace must be transformative and help empower learners with the necessary knowledge, values, attitude, and skills, and behavior to become agents of peace in their communities. We hope every one of us will join us in this campaign to ensure lasting peace in our world by using all our capabilities and platforms to deconstruct hate speech and teach the values of peace and harmonious coexistence. That is it on the International Day segment. I am Aisha Hussein. Education Today continues in a moment. Please don't go anywhere.
You're still on to Education Today on Light Radio, and right now we are moving into the discourse segment, and our guest is very much here with us. Today, we will be discussing TFund intervention in Nigerian higher education. How far so far? Again, the topic for today's discourse is TFund intervention in Nigerian higher education. How far so far? In January 2024, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu approved the release of 683 billion naira by the Tertiary Education Trust Fund as intervention fund for tertiary education institutions in the country. This is expected to assist the tertiary institutions in meeting with their infrastructural needs in order to enhance the quality of teaching and learning as well as research. This fund is also expected to be shared in the ratio of 2:1:1 in favor of the universities. On today's episode of Education Today, we want to take a look at some of these interventions by TFund. How effective have they been, and the calls by private universities to also benefit from such interventions by TFund. Joining us on the program today is our in-house analyst, an educational consultant, researcher, and lecturer at the University of Lagos. As usual, Mr. OLUBUNMI KAZEEM. Good afternoon once again, Mr. KAZEEM.
Good afternoon, Nyema. Good afternoon, listeners. It's a pleasure to be here again.
All right, so don't forget you can be part of the discourse by sending your comments and questions to 0809-738-4000, or you might as well drop them as comments via the live video feeds on Facebook and YouTube. Now, before moving into the discourse proper, our short quiz question for today is: what is the name of the explorer after whom Bermuda was named, and what was his nationality? Don't forget, we treated that under the Did You Know segment. So if you really were following us, do attempt to answer the quiz question. The question again is: what is the name of the explorer after whom Bermuda was named, and what was his nationality? Send your answer to the WhatsApp number 0809-738-4000 or under our Facebook or YouTube page. The first correct answer wins the prize. So quickly, without much ado, Mr. KAZEEM, to an average listener and our audience out there, what is TFund and how did it come about?
Well, TFund actually stands for Tertiary Education Trust Fund. TFund, Tertiary Education Trust Fund, and it is an intervention agency by the federal government, established by the federal government to intervene, especially in the provision of funds for meeting the infrastructural needs of tertiary institutions in Nigeria.
All
now,
right.
how did it come about? Actually, it did not start as TFund. It actually started as ETF, Education Trust Fund.
All right.
Yes. Education Trust Fund, came to life in 1992, following a review of higher education in Nigeria. The thing then was, before 1991, 1992, under the administration of General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, IBB,
Okay.
in the 90s, early 90s to be precise, there had not been any review of Nigeria's educational system or, real serious long-term strategic planning of education since independence. The last time we had was that of 1959, the Ashby Commission, committee that really, it's a commission. It investigated and planned Nigeria's educational system ahead of independence. So we're approaching independence in 1959, the colonial administration set up the Ashby Commission to plan for Nigeria's education, post-independence.
Wow.
That, as we are living, a lot of the white people, the expatriates working in Nigeria would also leave. So there would be a vacuum that would be left behind. So in terms of manpower, so that vacuum will be there. And we're talking about a new nation, an independent nation that will come about. So how then will this nation be able to survive and cope with the manpower needs? So automatically must set up institutions that must produce the right level of manpower that can actually sustain the nation, the independent nation, for as long as possible. So they looked into the future and they set up that commission. So apart from that review, which led to the establishment, the report of which led to the establishment of many institutions, many universities, including the National Manpower Board, including the National Universities Commission, as well as the establishment of teacher training institutions, vocational and technical training institutions, and other universities like that. We did not have any review until almost about 30 years thereafter, in the 1990s. So the Babangida administration set up what we call the Grey Lunge Commission to also review higher education in Nigeria and what is actually going on there. Then again, we also had ASU. Then there were strikes, because ASU also complained that many Nigerian academics are really not being taken care of. The infrastructure within the institutions are nothing to write home about. You can imagine how long the struggle has been. So, as a result of these two, then there was another committee that was now set up to review the report of the Lunge Commission and the demands of ASU in that line. So that, okay, if at all we now want to fix the decay in terms of infrastructure in our institutions, they will must look for an alternative way of funding the provision of this infrastructure. So as a recommendation, so the government came up with a decision then. Part of the report and the recommendation even by ASU was that 2% of the profit of companies operating in Nigeria should be devoted to education.
Wow.
And education at all levels. So 2% of the company income tax would go into a particular fund. So that was how the Education Trust Fund came about. So the 2% of such profit would be, it's a pool of funds that will now be used to fund education at all levels. So then it was ETF was taking care of primary, secondary, and tertiary education in terms of funding. However, with the return to democracy in 1999, President Obasanjo launched UBE. So with the enabling law of UBE, we had what now called UBEC, Universal Basic Education Commission. So that commission now sees to the funding of basic education in Nigeria. So that is a percentage of government's funding that is reserved for basic education, consolidated revenue. So at the end of the day, so ASU and other tertiary institutions felt that automatically basic education, which involves both primary and an aspect of secondary education, is already taken care of by UBEC. So automatically, why then should you now say ETF should still continue to fund these lower levels of education? So why not let us concentrate the funding or the functions of ETF, on tertiary education? So in 2011, the law was reviewed.
All right.
So and that review of the law gave birth to what we now call Tertiary Education Trust Fund. So to replace Education Trust Fund. So that was how TFund came to replace ETF, and that's the story surrounding the emergence of TFund.
All right. Thank you for providing such succinct answer to the question. So, quickly, what are the roles of TFund in education? Although from your first answer to the question, we can get some from them, but just
basically, see, the role of TFund is to be an interventionist agency. It's not a direct funder of education.
Okay.
It is to actually intervene in the provision of, and to probably plug the infrastructural gap that we have in the tertiary institutions. That's one. Then number two is also assist in the capacity development of, staff of these tertiary institutions, public tertiary institutions to be specific now. So in terms of, assisting workers or some of these lecturers to go for capacity building programs, trainings, workshops, even additional qualifications. So it is there. They are also to fund research. And that's why you would hear of TFund releasing funds for national research, for these institutions and things like that. So the idea is you cannot have an institution that is only teaching without research. Research is an integral part of the functions of tertiary institutions. So TFund is intervening in assisting in funding the research undertaken by these institutions and their staff members. So they assist in that, as well as even in production of journals and books and other things like that. So you would see that its role is specific. It's not in funding. TFund does not pay the salary of these institutions. It does not buy all this. But what it does is infrastructure for equipment. buildings. And that's why you see in a lot of this institutions, you would see that you see a TFund project, so and so 2000 and something, TFund, this by TFund buses and things like that. So that's the work of it, is to be an interventionist agency so that to fill the shortfall in funding or in the infrastructural facilities that are non-existent or that have probably become dilapidated, so that at least one way or the other these institutions can still keep running.
All right. Oh, so moving on to the next question. How would you rate the performance of TFund over the years, in the area of infrastructural development of tertiary institutions in Nigeria?
Well, in the area of infrastructural development, I would give TFund like say 65 to 70%.
Okay,
in the sense that
beyond average.
Yes, because sincerely, without TFund, a lot of our institutions will probably be nothing other than glorified secondary schools.
Wow.
Yes, in reality, because government itself has actually failed in its duty to really fund these institutions and provide the necessary enabling environment for students to learn, for workers to work. Because if you are to look at it, a lot of the buildings that are still standing, apart from the ones that probably have been built by the colonial masters or the first generation of leaders that we had at independence, a lot of these institutions are actually surviving with TFund infrastructure. So it means that remove TFund, government has actually failed in it. And don't mind you, we're talking about this, don't forget that it is actually the tax that is coming from the income of these companies operating in Nigeria that we're actually deploying.
So it's
to
not
TFund.
From
so
the
it's not
pockets.
as if it's coming directly from government coffers.
Okay.
So in that area, TFund has actually tried. Sincerely, it has tried. But I believe it can actually still do better. Because a lot of times you also look at, sometimes, even the quality of some of these projects, in terms of supervision, it still leaves much to be desired. Because, okay, I'll give you an instance. There's a particular institution that I know in this very Lagos. It's a federal tertiary institution. I want to mention the name. A building, a TFund intervention, a building that has not been used for one day was already cracking.
Wow.
Eventually, that they had to demolish that building now.
Wow.
So, and imagine the amount of money. I'm sure by the time you quantify, they would say it's so billion. And it was not used for one day. It was not even commissioned.
Wow.
It was still a waiting commission when they noticed it cracks and things like that. So, and a contractor worked on this, and a particular supervisor, supervised such a project. So you are talking. So that's what we were saying, that a lot of oversight. There is another university that I know of in this Nigeria, a building that is still ongoing, caved in.
Wow.
A building under construction, caved in. A university, a federal university for that matter. And so you look at it, and for a lot of even states that are establishing, because TFund's intervention is not restricted to federal universities or federal polytechnics or colleges of education. It applies to all public tertiary institutions,
whether state-owned or
whether it is state-owned, whether it is federal, government-owned. So it is public institutions, so that they are trying to intervene. So TFund has done a lot in terms of providing these funds, but how well has it supervised the judicious use of these funds, and how well has it also done a lot in terms of ensuring that these interventions actually stand the test of time in terms of the maintenance culture established or framework undertaken by these institutions to ensure that, yes, we intervene this year. We will not be intervening in a particular project every year. Yes. By the time we do this year, we might not probably come back to your institution with such an intervention in that particular area. For instance, if it's a hostel building, we might not come back to build another hostel in that institution probably for the next 10 years.
Yes.
It might actually be in another, probably a faculty building. At another time, it might probably be a library. At another time, it might actually be a laboratory. At another time, it could actually be a research center and things like that. So, on an annual basis, they do that. That is what we call regional intervention based on the geopolitical zones, and also have state intervention within each state where these interventions are undertaken. So imagine you now intervene in a particular year, and such a project is not properly maintained. Or like the one that I talked about, that it's even caved in when it has not even been used for one day. So imagine what would happen. And it means a lot of the funds that we were getting is going down the drain. So that's why I would not probably give them, 100% of something like. So that's why I'm saying 65%. I think it's a pass mark. That's a B, ordinary.
That's understandable.
Yeah.
They'll definitely drink water to that. So, President Tinubu recently approved the sum of 683 billion naira for Strategic Intervention Fund. How do you think these huge amounts of money could be utilized?
Well, I think when that fund was released, there was also a specification what exactly will go for each university, what will go for each polytechnic, what will go for each college of education. So I think that beyond the release of the fund, TFund, the Federal Ministry of Education, National Universities Commission, National Commission for Colleges of Education, National Board for Technical Education, these are regulatory agencies of government. They need to follow up the money. The street language is follow the money. Yes. By the time you follow the money, you find out whether it is actually properly being utilized or not. And I also think, and I'm also using this, at this juncture, calling on the anti-corruption agencies to also beam their searchlights on the utilization of these funds. Because it's one problem when we say education is not properly funded. Then it's another thing when even the meager funds are also now diverted.
Misused.
Imagine what happened to the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. The one we now call the Better Gate. Where the social intervention program of the federal government is actually, being, the funds actually being embezzled and misappropriated. Imagine such now happening to education when we're saying we don't even have enough.
Yes.
That our tertiary institutions, the public institutions, are in a dilapidated state. Now imagine government releasing the money and the money is not actually, being used for what it is actually desired for. Or when you now even have the institution, that's another one for the institutions. The maintenance culture is virtually absent. It's a case of a government property, so it can,
anything
rot away. Anything, how you say, anything goes. It's none of my business. So far, it's not my father's property. That culture of waste is something that we really need to check. So beyond just releasing the money, let the government also take a step further to ensure that these monies are being properly, utilized.
All right. So moving away from the TFund topic, with the recent approval of students' loan and the following increments in school fees, what do you think is the hope for the average Nigerian students out there?
Well, I think it's more of a dilemma in the sense that, yes, you want to be hopeful that things will get better, but sometimes when you look at the indicators, the pointers out there, it leaves so much to be desired as to whether or not we are really serious about what we really want to do for the masses. And I'm being objective here in the sense that there was a removal of fuel subsidy was one of the things that actually aggravated this situation where which led to the increment in the school fees.
Yes.
Now, what these institutions used as a pretext was the fact that the government was going to come up with a student loan thing in order to provide funds for the students to be able to meet up with the school fees. Eventually, the fees were increased even before the loan was launched. That was preemptive. Until now, the loan is still not yet accessible because we are still trying to fine-tune, the modalities. The site is not yet up and running. So, and we're saying that it's actually going to be virtual. So, it will be online. It will be open to everyone. Fine. But the reality is, what are the modalities? What are the conditions attached to the loan? All these are still, being worked on. How long will it take to be refunded and things like that? They are still being worked on. The law, yes, although it was signed, there are still reservations about the law. So it means that one way or the other, there might be a need for us to actually amend the student loan bill.
Yes, to review it.
Yeah, to review it, to reflect the realities of modern times. Now, that is there. We have not even done that, and the school fees have already been increased.
Yes.
Now, a lot of these institutions, some students have already dropped out because they can't meet up, because the loan is not yet even available, and the schools have already done registration. So imagine that the schools have gone ahead with the registration, and the loan with which the students are supposed to be able to access, be able to pay the loan, is not yet available.
So I want to ask, TFund now, like, can they intervene for students too?
Okay, the enabling law establishing TFund did not give it room for you to be able to do that.
Yes.
Unless we probably now amend the TFund law to be able to, come up in that kind of intervention. Else, it won't do it. But then, I think that as far as hope is, if government can follow through with this student loan scheme and ensure that it is open and accessible to all, and it is also transparently done, so that it's not as if we are claiming that, yes, we are providing this institution. And the reality is, the fund is not coming to individuals' pockets.
It's going to school directly.
It is going to be paid into the institution's coffers directly. So at the end of the day, okay, this particular student applied for this loan. Yes, so the name institution take, this student has paid, so we are paying on behalf of this student with the condition that he is going to pay by the time he graduates, or after 2 years after graduation. That's the idea. So that at the end of the day, money will not be a condition or a hindrance to acquisition of education. So that's the idea. So I'm hopeful, and we are praying. Hope is what is actually keeping us alive as Nigerians. So we are hopeful that it will be done. But minus hope, seriously, that is nothing. That is nothing that actually gives us that belief that anything would work well in Nigeria.
All right. So, one more question before we go for a quick break. With the rate of corruption in Nigeria as we speak, what measures can you outline to be put in place to ensure prudent utilization of the loan scheme as well as the education trust fund?
That fund. Okay, fine. I would say that I think the government really needs. I don't know how. I can't say it's not operational, but I think that there should be an annual audit of any agency of government where monetary transaction is involved.
That's very valid.
So that on an annual basis, TFund can say this was what we received from these companies. This is the actual amount. This is our disbursement. The institutions will also confirm, yes, TFund said you collected so amount of money. Can you show cause or show proof of exactly how much you received?
Yeah.
And how you used it.
And how it was utilized. So at the end of the day, when there is accountability, and unfortunately, see, for the institutions, there is a mechanism that is meant to do that. That's why you have what we call the governing council, with different representatives on the council. Representative of the government, representative of the Ministry of Education, representative of NUC, representative of the community, representative of the alumni. But usually, a lot of times, what happens is more like a gang up. An agglomeration of those whose interest is, let us take as much as what we can take. This is our own share of the national cake. So, minus that, ordinarily, by the time there is an annual audit, I think that there is the level of accountability of these institutions and the agencies of government is very, very low. And if government itself is not accountable to the people, then what are we saying? So, ordinarily, there should be such where you render accounts publicly.
Yes.
Open the books up. Transparency. There is nothing to even hide. By the time you do that, you're actually laying a solid foundation for those coming after that. A lot of times you even talk about student unionism, and they blame them that this student union, leaders, they embezzle the SUG funds and things like that. Yes, because every now and then, a lot of times, there is an audit committee that is set up to, check their books. And a lot of times, they are always found culpable. But what happens thereafter is another thing entirely. It's a story for another day. But then, if we can be emphasizing that for the students, how often or when have you heard that, okay, the VC now say, okay, this year, this was all that we received, and this is all that we spent, this is how much we probably have left as probably surplus, or this is even the deficit. Have you heard of it?
No.
And ordinarily, we're supposed to have what we call congregation in all these institutions where the management renders accounts. And ordinarily, they claim that they render account actually to the governing council. But do we get to hear anything? Oh.
All right, so we'll go on a real quick break. When we return, the program continues. Please stay with us. Welcome back. You're still listening to Education Today on Light Radio, and we have been looking at TFund in Nigeria, how far so far. And we will here's a reminder of our short quiz, and the question is, what is the name of the explorer after whom Bermuda was named, and what was his nationality? Don't forget, you can send your answer to the WhatsApp number 0809-738-4000, or you can drop it as a comment on our Facebook or YouTube live feed. The first correct answer wins the prize. So moving on to the with the discuss segment, Aisha has a question for.
Okay, so they have been caused by private university for inclusion in TFund intervention. So I want to ask, should it begin? Should it start?
Well, first is, right now that is impossible because the enabling law that sets off TFund restricts its intervention to public institutions.
Yeah,
that's
you mentioned
number one.
that earlier.
The number two is the fact that there are now pressures on the members of the National Assembly to amend the TFund law in order to allow them intervene in private, universities and the likes like that. These private universities have been calling for it. Some members of the National Assembly are also trying to call for that. And see, ASU has actually come out to alert. ASU has come out to alert the whole nation, including NANS, that, see, wake up.
No grief.
This is coming.
It's true.
Now, the reason is, we're talking about the fact that a private university should not be set up if the proprietor doesn't have the capacity to run the institution, to provide the necessary facilities the institution needs. That's number one. Number two is, the students of these institutions, they pay tuition. They pay everything they benefit from. Everything. Nothing is free.
Way higher. Like,
they pay tuition. Public institutions don't pay tuition. These private universities, they charge tuition, and the students pay in the millions.
Yeah.
Yes, they pay. You charge this money from these students, including feeding. Yes, accommodation and all what's not that these students are expected to pay, and you treat them like secondary school students. That's the reality. Well, that's up to them. It's their choice. But then, the reality is, after collecting all that from the institutions, some of these universities we're talking about, their proprietors even religious organizations where funding comes.
Donation.
From
all angles.
Different ones, endowments by members of the congregation. You mean after collecting all this, still want to collect Nigerian taxpayers' money?
Something that's not even enough for the people that are supposed to get
anything, these universities, these private institutions ought to also be contributing to TFund.
I was actually
their
thinking
own
about
income tax.
If not, they will tell you 1%.
Yeah, see, and at the end of the day, with all this, for someone to now claim that TFund should also intervene in private institutions, I think that is a disservice to this country, and that would be fraudulent.
I even think they should go through their own funding to see how.
The reality is, if care is not taken, this thing will scale through, because you are talking about members of National Assembly. See, some of these members of National Assembly also have their own universities.
Exactly.
They're literally fighting for their own selfish interest.
See, it is selfish interest. So, see, that is the reality. It is selfish interest. Because these universities will claim, these private universities are claiming that we don't have enough funds, we're having challenges, the economy is harsh, and things like that. But the economy is harsh. But that does not stop you from increasing your fees.
Exactly.
It does not stop you from increasing the fees payable by these students. Now you are collecting from the student and you still want to collect from the government. If you don't have the capacity to run the institution, is it by force that you must run the institution? Close up! Or in fact, even merge. You can even merge. You can merge. No, seriously, you can merge. If banks were told to recapitalize, then why can't institutions recapitalize? Or why can't institutions merge to meet up with the standards? So why must he even run? Imagine, see, because it is private. Now, the number of private institutions are more than the public institutions.
Exactly.
And still, they want government. So how many institutions will government intervene for?
I can't.
So it means that if you will now do that for universities, then you also now do that for polytechnics and colleges of education. That would be ridiculous.
Very, very.
In fact, ridiculous is an understatement for such a call. It's an unpatriotic call, very, very fraudulent call. And if the members of the National Assembly go ahead, whoever that sponsors such a bill for the amendment of the TFund Act to allow intervention in private institutions, such a member of the National Assembly should be recalled by the constituent. Yes.
Yeah, I believe
I'll
so.
be sued.
Because
you
cannot just jail. This is a democracy, so it's within their right to call for such.
Yes,
but it's for us. They can ask, but it is for the government not to listen to such. And I think that would be very, very unpatriotic. Because if you don't have it, you are not forced to actually run these universities, and government did not ask you to set up universities on their behalf. See, because a lot of times, let me say this, because we need to probably go historical a bit.
Yeah.
In the past, during the colonial era, we have what we call the grants in aid, that the government gives or government gave to the missionaries who set up schools, because those schools were having issues of quality in terms of infrastructure and the likes like that. Government now gave them aids, but then there were no public institutions.
Okay.
So government felt that, well, you are helping us to do our jobs.
Of course.
So we don't have schools yet. We were only faced with the economy. We were only facing the economy and to ensure that people accept our rule. So we actually did not have time. Government did not have time to face education. So the missionaries that were now setting up these schools, the government felt that, okay, fine, as a way of assisting. And for the fact that, see, the missionaries and the colonial masters, a lot of them, they came from the same place.
Yeah.
They were foreigners coming from the same place, so they understood what was operating, where they came from. So they were like, okay, you're helping us to do our job. Okay, take this. And when government, later at some point, government felt that, no, as we are giving you money, you must regulate your affairs. Because then the missionaries were in control of education. So they had monopoly. So the government came in with regulation. And for the fact that for you to qualify for our funds, that you must meet certain, requirements. So government did that. But you cannot talk about now that when we have these public institutions, we are even saying that these public institutions are not properly funded. You now want to say
then
that
the little they are getting,
so
you still want to share in that.
No. That's criminal.
All right, Aisha, do you have another question for?
Yes,
I guess
I'd like to ask. How can the government improve the funding of tertiary education in Nigeria? Like,
Okay, in improving the funding of tertiary education in Nigeria, well, beyond some of these interventionist agencies that we talk about, I think it's important that the government itself gets its priority right. As far as I'm concerned, the political will to really give the people the kind of education they require is not there. And I'm saying this with all sense of objectivity and sincerity, because government schools should be the standards. But unfortunately, that's not the case, because you now have a situation where some people will tell you that if you want the best of academic calendar, a smooth academic calendar without strikes, then you probably go to private institution. If you want the best of facilities, go to private institutions. If you want probably the best of lecturers and things like that, well, I don't think they have the best of lecturers though, because they can't even pay. Minus that is the fact that yes, a lot of them are only interested in making money, not necessarily giving the quality education. We can count those who really are giving quality education among all the private tertiary institutions that we have. So what we are saying is that let government institutions, public institutions, be the yardstick upon which we talk about excellence. See, let them lead the way.
It should be the basic.
See, they should be the pace setters. That's one. So, and that will be a function of the political will and the priority government accords to education. Minus that is the fact that government needs to increase the budgetary allocation to education. See, education is not cheap.
Bam.
It's very expensive, and you must be willing to spend on education. And that's why it said that if you think education is expensive, why not try ignorance?
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, see, it's someone is paying. See, there is no free education anywhere in the world. Someone somewhere is paying. There is no free lunch even in Freetown. So if you understand that, then automatically we must do our best in ensuring that we provide enough funds in terms of budgetary allocation to education. And beyond that is, let us follow up the money to ensure that these funds are being properly utilized. The minus that is the fact that there must be accountability by everyone concerned. Then again, we also need to continue to review the output from our institutions with the expectations of the society, because we might not just be putting in the money. We also need to look at evaluate the graduates, the output of these institutions in terms of their graduates, in terms of their research output, in terms of their community engagement, in terms of the relevance of their curriculum. These are things that we need to continue to do, so that at the end of the day you can say, are they globally competitive?
Yes.
So these are the things that I think we really need to really pay attention to.
One last question: How best can the government improve the efficiency of TFund?
Improving the efficiency of TFund, I think probably even at this juncture, we might need to even look at increasing that percent instead of just 2%. Now, probably we can up it a bit little, probably to 3%.
5%.
No, let me not even say 5% because there are so many other things. Let's just even say 3%. Minus that is the fact that we also need the intervention of some other philanthropists, because we are saying, even talking about the funding of private, public education in Nigeria.
Many
philanthropists, you see them actually, intervening and providing funds in private institutions,
even when they are products of these
public institutions. So I think that we really need to get our priorities right. Then beyond that is the fact that, because you asked that, how best can government improve the efficiency of TFund, is also by ensuring that they don't just release the money, they follow up the money. Then again is the fact that TFund itself, we really need to look at the caliber of people that are actually being sent there. What experience do they have in managing funds? So that it's not just even about receiving the fund. We also need to look at, are there other investments that we can also put this money that will be able to capable of bringing in more money for TFund to actually operate. So the operational efficiency of TFund is something that we really need to examine.
All right, that'll be all we can take on the discuss segments. We'd like to appreciate our in-house analyst, Mr. KAZEEM, for the beautiful insights he never ceases to provide on the program. So right now we'll move on to the Words on the Marble segment of Education Today, where we take a look at memorable quotes that inspire everyone. Today we have a quote from a former American president, Theodore Roosevelt, and according to Theodore, to educate a person in the mind but not in morals is to educate a menace to society. I hope you get that. So the quote once again is to educate a person in the mind, but not in morals is to educate a menace to the society. And that's our words on the marble for today. Ethics and morality are essential parts of education. You know, their importance cannot be overemphasized. Imparting knowledge without morality will only result in having a society of literate rogues who would only think about themselves at the expense of the populace. We do not have an answer to the quiz question, so quickly we'd like to inform you, our esteemed listeners, that you can advertise your products and services and also showcase your events on our program. This you can do by calling the number 0703 953 8998 or 0702 507 4268. Thank you very much for joining us today. Let us know how you feel about today's program through our various platforms on Facebook /Education Today, on X at Education Today, no space, and on YouTube, Education space today. You can also send us an email via educationmediaservices@gmail.com. Many thanks to the entire crew of Education Today and the management of Light Radio. The supervising producer has been Vibes MC. Thank you very much. And every other person in the control room. Do join us same time next week on this station. I remain Nima Ibrahim. And with me in the studio has been
I shall say.